highest art of warfare is not to fight at all, but to subvert anything of value in your enemy's country. When everything is subverted, when the country is disoriented and confused, when it is demoralized and then destabilized, then the crisis will come.
A suspected Chinese spy balloon hovering over the northern U.S.
Toxic train derailment in Ohio.
More material marked classified has been found at a second location from President Biden's time as vice president.
The chaotic and deadly U.S. evacuation from Afghanistan stunned Americans and the world.
It erupted outside a police training facility with explosives and Molotov cocktails thrown at officers.
Secret Service now says a substance found at the White House has been confirmed as cocaine.
There will be no charges for the former Senate staffer who made a sex tape inside of a hearing room.
The conspiracy theorist has been ordered to pay $965 million.
Children in Washington state will soon not need their parents' permission to switch genders.
The state at this point may start to try to seize some of the former president's assets.
Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country.
Osama bin Laden's infamous letter to America, which condemns the United States for its support of Israel, is now going viral on TikTok, and it appears to be gaining sympathy.
They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence.
They're not going to stop, and this is a movement, I'm telling you. They're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not, and we should not.
That are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country.
This year, Easter coincides with Transgender Day of Visibility.
At some point, you know, maybe there needs to be a formal deprogramming of the cult members.
He is essentially paraphrasing what Adolf Hitler talked about in Mein Kampf. Adolf Hitler responsible for killing millions and millions of Jewish people.
Yeah, he's basically portraying a future for America if he is put back in the White House in which we don't have another election after that.
That's
ever.
Right.
He will imprison, he will execute whoever he's allowed to imprison, execute, drive from the country.
I just feel a lot of concern that 2024 may be the year of a black swan event. This is a national security event with high impact that's very hard to predict. There are a number of concerns that I have that factor into that. And not only this sort of enduring heightened threat level that we're facing, the wars in Israel, also Ukraine. And we're so divided in this country in ways that we haven't seen before. And I think that just creates fertile ground for our adversaries like North Korea, China, and Iran. And that's what concerns me most.
We all know, but still pay insufficient attention to the frightening scenario of a comprehensive cyber attack, which would bring to a complete halt to the power supply, transportation, hospital services, our society as a whole. The COVID-19 crisis would be seen in this respect as a small disturbance in comparison.
As of 2017, 6 major conglomerates lorded over mainstream media, be it broadcast, print, internet, radio, or film. Very little existed outside of their umbrellas. The big 6 at the time were Time Warner, Comcast, Disney, Sony, Rupert Murdoch's News Corp, and National Amusements, now Paramount Global. It is a stretch to call these companies competitors per se, as even these umbrella companies are all mutually owned by the world's largest institutional investors, asset managers like BlackRock Inc., the Vanguard Group, State Street, and Berkshire Hathaway, whose representatives share mutual agendas and remain regular fixtures in various globalist think tanks.
Well, behaviors are going to have to change, and this is one thing we're asking companies. You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors. You know, what we're doing internally is if you don't achieve these levels of impact, your compensation could be impacted, okay?
We're doing the same thing.
And so it's just, you have to force behaviors. And if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. And that's not recruiting, it is development, as Ken said. And ultimately, it's still going to take time, but I am just as much shocked as Ken is that we have not seen more opportunities, and we're going to have to force change.
BlackRock in particular exercises tremendous financial power. Through an array of social, environmental, and economic policy frameworks, BlackRock and their so-called competitors mutually enforce the will and agendas of the international think tank class onto the entirety of the corporate world. The big 6 media companies, despite public perceptions, are just components of one quasi-monopolistic, centralized system of systems.
President Biden, something the special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's
How
totally
bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
At least on paper, the primary mandate of a free press is to act as a counterbalance, to keep rampant establishment powers in check. However, the press in modernity is not only failing in its role of keeping the establishment in check, the press routinely and proactively defends the establishment through illusion, omission, and gaslighting. From CIA drug smuggling to the creation of ISIS to the countless US-backed regime changes worldwide, these topics are well known and discussed throughout the developing world, yet the average American or news anchor refuses to touch them.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
The role of the press in our society is crucial to the population's discernment between truth and fiction. If a nation was to be subverted from within, the press would undoubtedly be the primary weapon leveraged by its adversaries. And this is exactly our current predicament. As a mechanism of fifth-generational warfare, news organizations and even individual journalists are often tapped as assets by intelligence agencies seeking to control a narrative. This was the case with German journalist and whistleblower Udo Ulfkott.
Well, I've been a journalist for about 25 years, and I was educated to lie, to betray, and not to tell the truth to the public. It is not right what I have done in the past, to manipulate people, to make propaganda against Russia, and it is not right what my colleagues do and have done in the past, because they are bribed to betray the people, not only in Germany, all over Europe. I just have written in the book how we have betrayed in the past our readers just to push for war, and because I don't want this anymore. I'm fed up with this propaganda. I was supported by the Central Intelligence Agency, by the CIA. Why? Because I should be pro-American. I'm fed up with it. I don't want to do it anymore.
The Central Intelligence Agency has been a significant force in US and international news media since the end of World War II, exerting considerable influence over what the public sees, hears, and reads.
Anderson, what influence do you think the CIA has when it comes to mainstream media?
Dude, you're being just ridiculous.
To manipulate the news and mainstream media?
So Anderson Cooper has 3 security guards all around him now.
Get just one statement from you.
Researchers have long pointed to Project Mockingbird as the quintessential example of collusion between intelligence and media. Mockingbird emerged from the CIA forerunner, the Office of Strategic Services, which had established a network of journalists and psychological warfare experts by the end of World War II.
Hey Anderson, we had a great interview last time. I was wondering if you get a chance to look into Operation Mockingbird? You know what that is.
You're talking about something, what, from the 1950s, dude?
1970s, official declassified program, how the CIA infiltrated the mainstream media from the higher up.
Right.
It's declassified.
The State Department's Office of Policy Coordination, the OPC, led by OSS staffer Frank Wisner, continued several OSS contacts after the war and was absorbed by the newly formed Central Intelligence Agency. According to author and historian Lisa Peace, the OPC, quote, became the fastest growing unit within the nascent CIA, rising in personnel from 302 in 1949 to 2,812 in 1952, along with 3,142 overseas contract personnel. In the same period, the budget rose from $4.7 million to $82 million. In 1948, the OPC and Office of Special Operations merged to form the CIA, absorbing OPC media assets. Wisner would officially establish Mockingbird that year. At that time, Frank Wisner was in possession of the top-secret Propaganda Assets Inventory, otherwise known as Wisner's Mighty Wurlitzer, a Rolodex of over 800 news and information entities who were prepared to sing any tune Wisner chose. Wisner was a close associate of CIA Director Allen Dulles. Together they recruited Philip Graham, husband of Washington Post owner Katharine Graham, to run the Mockingbird operation within the industry. The Washington Post would develop into one of the most influential news organizations in the United States, thanks in part to its ties with the CIA.
1/3 of my staff in this task force was covert action, was propagandists, whose professional career jobs was making up stories and finding ways to get them into the press.
An unofficial biography on Graham's wife, titled Catherine the Great, asserts that, quote, by the early 1950s, Wisner owned respected members of the New York Times, Newsweek, CBS, and other communications vehicles. Unfortunately, Philip Graham later committed suicide at the age of 48. His son, William Graham, followed suit 50 years later.
The idea that it is necessarily nefarious, it's always engaged in overthrowing governments, that's false.
This has gone on 50 or 60 years, where the United States has been involved in overthrowing governments. Mossadegh back in 1953. Nobody knows who Mossadegh was. democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran. He was overthrown by British and American interest because he threatened oil interest of the British. And as a result of that, the Shah of Iran came in, terrible dictator. As a result of that, you had the Iranian Revolution coming in, and that's where we are today. Unintended consequences.
By the late 1950s, to reduce criticisms leveled against its domestic influence operations, the agency aimed to avoid judicial intervention or congressional monitoring by, quote, infiltrating the groves of academia, the missionary corps, the editorial boards of influential journal and book publishers, and any other quarters where public attitudes could be effectively influenced.
I can assure you that the CIA, when I was there as director, and I'm quite sure it's the same with Mr. McCone, has given these committees full information about what it's doing, how it's spending its money, and how it operates.
Carl Bernstein, one of the journalists who broke the Watergate scandal, in his landmark article, The CIA and the Media, asserted that the CIA had continued its furtive relationship with the press from the 1950s into the late 70s. In this article, Bernstein claimed that there were well-known columnists and broadcast commentators whose, quote, relationships with the CIA go far beyond those normally maintained between reporters and their sources. They are referred to at the agency as known assets and can be counted on to perform a variety of undercover tasks. They are considered receptive to the agency's point of view on various subjects. In 1977, Rolling Stone magazine alleged that one of the most important journalists under the control of Operation Mockingbird was Joseph Alsop, whose articles appeared in over 300 different newspapers. However, the CIA's involvement with the media did not remain limited to print. In 1999, the CIA established a venture capital arm called In-Q-Tel, which sought to, quote, identify and invest in companies developing cutting-edge information technologies that serve United States national security interests. The firm has established financial relationships with Google and Facebook, among many other internet platforms. Quote, while In-Q-Tel originally catered largely to the needs of the CIA, today the firm supports many of the 17 agencies within the US intelligence community, including the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and the Department of Homeland Security Science and Technology Directorate. In 2012, at an In-Q-Tel meeting, then CIA Director David Petraeus stated that the rapidly developing Internet of Things and smart home appliances would provide the CIA with the ability to spy on any US citizen should they become a person of interest to the spy community.
But you believe you're consistent with the statutes, but there isn't any statute that prohibits your interception of domestic communications.
I believe that's correct.
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
The CIA has been caught not only persuading the media to avoid certain topics, but thoroughly discrediting and potentially even assassinating anyone who attempted to air the agency's dirty laundry.
You're talking about your uncle who's assassinated, and you believe the intelligence agencies were part of that. What happens to you?
Well, I gotta be careful. I mean, I'm aware of that, and I'm not, you know, I'm aware of that danger, and I don't live in fear of it, at all. But I'm not stupid about it, and I take precautions.
As far as I know, we don't engage in assassinations and kidnappings and things of that kind. As far as I know, we never have.
In 1980, a bomb exploded at Bologna railway station, which killed 86 people. 6 years later, an official report revealed the existence of an invisible government in Italy, run by the state secret services and groups of political terrorists.
From the late 1960s through the 80s, mainstream news outlets completely ignored Operation Gladio, the well-documented cooperation between NATO and Western spy agencies, including the CIA, that involved coordinated terrorist attacks and bombings of civilian targets throughout Europe.
It also identified a secret military and civilian organization under which neo-fascist groups were allowed to commit atrocities against civilians for political motives.
Despite being well documented in Europe, only 4 articles mentioning Gladio ever appeared in US publications. One can also look to the late Gary Webb, whose writings brought the CIA's involvement in drug trafficking to a much larger audience.
Investigating covert CIA operations, investigating the CIA in general, is now off limits to the press, unless you have what Ted Turner called proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which when you're talking about covert operations, you're never going to find as a journalist.
His series in the San Jose Mercury News, titled Dark Alliance, would enrage black communities, prompt congressional hearings, and become one of the first major national security stories in history to blow up the internet.
The Dark Alliance referred to the allegiance between these Contra drug traffickers and the gangs of Los Angeles, who were their main customers.
And who are the Contras?
The Contras were former Somoza supporters, former Somoza military officers who had been kicked out of Nicaragua in 1979 and were trying to retake the country with the aid of the CIA. The Contras were a creation of the CIA.
Webb's series would reveal that, in addition to waging a proxy war for the US government against Nicaragua's revolutionary Sandinista government in the 1980s, elements of the US-backed Contra rebels were also involved in trafficking cocaine to the US to fund their counter-revolutionary campaigns.
No drug seems to be spreading faster on the streets of Los Angeles than rock cocaine. Some say it has become an epidemic.
Webb reported that the illicit circulation of funds and narcotics was directly related to the subsequent crack cocaine epidemic that ravaged the most impoverished black communities in the country.
After the series came out, my story and myself were attacked by the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the LA Times.
For 10 years, the New York Times, as well as other national media, have been covering up or bottling up the story linking the Nicaraguan Contras to cocaine.
Call the skeptics names like conspiracy theorists, nuts, ranters, kooks, crackpots, and of course, rumor mongers.
We laid out a series based on a year of investigation that had buku government documents. Most of the series is based on government documents, DEA reports, FBI reports, the testimony of government witnesses. And at that point, the series is viewed as discredited because unnamed government sources told the Washington Post that they didn't believe it. So
Webb was found dead in his Carmichael home on December 10, 2004, with 2 gunshot wounds to the head. His death was ruled a suicide.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them.
Today, much less effort is spent trying to hide the connections between the intelligence community and the media. This is perhaps a symptom of America's late-stage subversion. Former CIA Director John Brennan, one of the primary players in the multi-pronged campaign against Donald Trump, would sign on with NBC News as Senior National Security and Intelligence Analyst.
But also, I think that my colleagues are concerned that the Russians see the Republican lawmakers as tools.
CNN employs former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper.
I think with respect to the dossier itself, the key thing is, it doesn't matter who paid for it.
And former FBI Deputy Director and Acting Director Andrew McCabe.
We get a lot of reports from the Washington Post, the New York Times. Are they accurate?
I think the reporting has been extraordinary.
This is why so many people can't stand the mainstream media and why there's a hardcore animosity towards the media that is pretty much commensurate or equivalent to the animosity towards Congress.
There has always been a subset of Americans who put little faith in legacy media, but in the late 2010s, America's trust in mass media began to plummet.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that that you may have.
I'm not concerned about anything with the Russian investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Mr. President. I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter, go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts his butt.
Well, I'm not
like
a big
the rest
fan
of
of yours either, so
I understand.
To be honest.
So let me ask you a question if I can. You repeatedly said...
You aren't the best.
Mr. President, you repeatedly, over the course of the...
Okay, just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people.
At the tail end of his administration, Barack Obama signed the Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act of 2016 and established the Global Engagement Center to, quote, direct, lead, synchronize, integrate, and coordinate U.S. federal government efforts to recognize, understand, expose, and counter foreign state and non-state propaganda and disinformation efforts aimed at undermining or influencing the policies, security, or stability of the United States, its allies, and partner nations.
GEC has issued grants to organizations that labeled Alexander Hamilton's New York Post one of the riskiest outlets, and another that had a hand in content moderation practices that targeted conservatives online. It's backed, quote, independent fact-checking organizations that are actually supported by left-wing billionaires.
This act provided greater ability to the U.S. government to censor dissenting opinions or information it deems a threat.
Today's threats are not, in some cases, as stark as they were in the last century, but the struggle for freedom and security and human dignity goes on. And we will have to summon the same capacity to adapt to new circumstances and to meet changing times while upholding timeless ideals.
Shortly thereafter, a mysterious group called Prop or Not appeared out of nowhere and issued a list of fake news sites, allegedly under, you guessed it,
Donald Trump offering a stunning rejection of U.S. intelligence following new reports from the CIA that Russia meddled in the election to help Trump win.
Don't forget, this persecution is being done by the same weaponized agencies that for 7 years have been running illegal psychological warfare campaigns against the American people, much as if they were trying to destabilize a foreign country.
The two faces of Hillary Clinton are coming out. The fact, through WikiLeaks, that she says one thing and...
Oh, no. All right, let's see if we can get Congressman Collins back. Obviously, we just lost his satellite feed.
The news media machine's psychological manipulation efforts would become more coordinated and overt than ever before.
I say this out of a firm concern for the future of my children and my grandchildren. Donald Trump cannot become our commander-in-chief.
As much as they hated him, Donald Trump would actually improve cable television's dismal ratings.
But they can make anything bad because they are the fake, disgusting news.
First, they claimed that he mocked a disabled reporter.
Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you gotta see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. Oh, I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. I thought, oh, maybe that's what I said. This is 14 years ago. They didn't do a retraction. 14 years ago, they did no retraction. I mentioned the word regulated. These guys come in, they run the banks. And I watched a general recently on television, and they said to him, what do you think about ISIS? Oh, ISIS is very tough. They said, Senator Cruz, what do you think of waterboarding? I don't want to talk about it.
They tried to convince the public that he was a racist, that he called white supremacists very fine people, while taking a speech out of context, a lie they've relied on heavily for years and continue to propagate in in the current election cycle.
What bothered you most about his comments on Charlottesville?
Oh, the good people on both sides.
Okay, so like Charlottesville, like an example, fine people on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was, to me, was kind of a unnecessary comment. And I think just knowing how, if you're so against the media, then why give them something to look for?
Right. Why not just say clearly, white supremacists, they should be condemned totally.
Yeah, exactly.
To make sure we're talking about the same thing, this was Charlottesville, right? You have the first.
Yep. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
While the mainstream media was building the narrative that Trump was a dangerous white nationalist, he was busy signing multiple bills designed to help marginalized communities.
This is history. This is history. Right now you're witnessing history on the floor of the U.S. Senate.
He signed the groundbreaking First Step Act, a criminal justice bill which enacted reforms that make our justice system fairer and help former inmates successfully reintegrate into society.
Hakeem Jeffries on the left, Jared Kushner, and Donald Trump on the right have brought together a coalition like I've never seen.
He also increased funding for historically black colleges and universities by more than 14%.
Now, as of tonight, we can verify the online rumor is true. President Trump has pushed more federal dollars toward historically black colleges and universities than any of his predecessors.
Instead of meaningless pandering to the gay community, he would appoint 5 openly gay ambassadors and initiated an effort to end criminalization of homosexuality globally.
As your president, I will do everything in my power to protect our LGBTQ citizens from the violence and oppression of a hateful foreign ideology. Believe me.
Trump even signed 3 bills in support of tribal sovereignty. One bill gave compensation to the Spokane tribe for the loss of their lands in the mid-1900s. Another reauthorized funding for native language programs, and a third bill giving federal recognition to the Little Shell tribe of Chippewa Indians in Montana.
Over the last 4 years, I created a nationwide task force to combat the crisis of missing and murdered Native Americans, especially women and children.
There was the lie about Trump's Muslim ban.
This was not a Muslim ban. This policy was the result of a careful global interagency analysis of vetting procedures for travelers to the US from Libya, Syria, Somalia, Yemen, and Iran.
And the infamous kids in cages lie, where they tried to blame Trump for an Obama-era policy on the southern border.
They were built by President Obama's administration, not by Trump. President Obama had child separation. Take a look. The press knows it, you know it, we all know it. I'm the one that stopped it.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez even used this false story as the backdrop for an opportunistic photo shoot. But when the number of migrant children sleeping in cages dramatically spiked under Joe Biden's watch, the media and AOC suddenly lost interest.
So you worked for the commissioner, your senior advisor. You were hired 2 weeks ago, and you're instructed to ask us to not have any pictures taken here.
Please respect the people,
because the political
rules.
leadership at DHS does not want the American people to know it.
Please respect the rules,
You keep
sir.
standing in front of the pictures, so
Please
you don't want the
respect the
pictures taken. The rules are arbitrary, and
Please
they're
respect
designed
the
to
rules
keep
and
the
give
American
the
people in the dark.
dignity and respect.
The selective outrage and fabrications were not the result of mere incompetence. This was the mainstream media knowingly acting in bad faith. It happened again with Trump's decision to withdraw troops from Syria, a move decried by establishment neocons and subsequently criticized in the media. ABC's World News Tonight drummed up a story about how the Turkish military ruthlessly slaughtered Kurds as a direct result of Donald Trump's decision to withdraw, using shocking footage of heavy machine gun fire. But it didn't take long for citizen journalists in the independent media to ascertain the true source of the footage: a popular semi-annual night shoot at a Kentucky gun range. The media chastised the president for suggesting that the coronavirus originated from a lab in Wuhan, China, only to quietly change their position once Trump was out of office.
Why do you keep using this? A
Because
lot of
it
people
comes
say
from
it's
China.
racist.
It's not racist at all, no, not at all. It comes from China. That's why. It comes from China. I want to be accurate.
But the most famous and damaging lie from the early Trump era was the Russian collusion hoax, born of the infamous Steele dossier that dominated the airwaves for years.
This week, we saw cold, hard evidence of the Trump campaign, indeed the Trump family, eagerly intending to collude possibly with Russia, a hostile foreign power, to influence American elections.
Hillary Clinton on the stump this week. We're joined now by her campaign manager, Robbie Mook. Thank you for joining us this morning.
The hand of the Kremlin has been at work in this campaign for some time. It's clear that they are supporting Donald Trump. But we now need Donald Trump to explain to us the extent to which the hand of the Kremlin is at the core of his own campaign. And there are real questions being raised about whether Donald Trump himself is just a puppet for the Kremlin in this race.
You're saying Donald Trump is a puppet for the Kremlin?
Well, real questions are being raised about that.
Corporate journos at the New York Times and the Washington Post were adorned with Pulitzers, and an expensive multi-year-long investigation began. Robert Mueller was billed in the media as an old-school, hard-nosed FBI agent who only dealt in facts, and was sure to prove without a doubt that Donald Trump had colluded with Russia.
But this is what the end result is. This was an attempted coup. This was an attempted takedown of a president. And we beat them. We beat them.
674 days and $32 million in taxpayer money later, Mueller's findings would deal a blow to the mainstream media that they would never fully recover from. Not only was legacy media attempting to convince viewers that Donald Trump was a racist and a criminal, they wanted the American people to view him as a traitor unto the nation.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will see whether Republicans stand strong for integrity of our elections, but whether or not they stand strong for our country. Our country. Our country has been under siege for a long time.
How many FBI agents or confidential informants actively participated in the events of January 6th?
Digital your non-uniform guys have any identifiers? Like wristband?
They will have a wristband. Their guns will have a candy stripe on the barrel.
Okay.
I don't know the wristband color, but they'll have a wristband somewhere, okay?
Sir, I'm sure you can appreciate that I can't go into the specifics of sources and methods.
Ms. Sadburn, who is Ray Epps?
In fact, tomorrow, I don't even like to say it because I'll be arrested.
Well, let's not say it.
We need to go, I'll say it. All right. We need to go in to the Capitol. Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol. Peacefully. Fed.
I'm aware of the individual, sir. I don't have the specific background to him.
We're not here to fight, man. We're here to storm. I'm not kidding.
We're here to storm the Capitol. Hell yeah. All right, have a good night. Be safe.
The next day, on January 6th, Mr. Epps is seen whispering to a person, and 5 seconds later, 5 seconds after he's whispering to a person, that same person begins to forcibly tear down the barricades. Ms. Sandburn, was Ray Epps a Fed?
Sir, I cannot answer that question.
Shortly thereafter, the FBI put out a public post seeking information on individuals connected with violent crimes on January 6th. Among those individuals, in the bottom there, is Mr. Epps. The FBI publicly asked for information, identifying, offering cash rewards leading to information leading to the arrest. This was posted, and then, sometime later, magically, Mr. Epps disappeared from the public posting.
And the FBI is encouraging people to turn in anyone that they know who was involved in that attack on the Capitol. That means, for some people, turning in their friends and even their own family members.
What's going on, everybody? My name's John Sullivan. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah. My group is Insurgents USA. We fucking about to burn this shit down. We got fucking rip Trump out of that office right over there. Fucking pull him out that shit. Nah, we ain't about fucking waiting until the next election. We about to go get that motherfucker. I ain't about that shit. Because you know what time it is? I want y'all to be after me. It's time for a revolution. It's time for a revolution. It's time for a revolution.
Revolver also highlights footage of John Sullivan, a suspected Antifa BLM undercover agent for the FBI, who taped the death of Ashley Babbitt and wore a MAGA hat while encouraging fellow rioters to burn down the Capitol.
From what I know is that Ray Epps and my brother John had met up prior to going to the Freedom Plaza. And if you look at the video of Ray Epps, people commenting with, see John right next to him.
Not Antifa,
they actually
not
pulled
Black
him.
Lives Matter. This is about the Constitution. It's more important than my life, your
undercover
life,
agent
their
type
job.
shit. Yeah. Agent from tour.
Yeah, no joke. Yo, hold up. I got
It's the Constitution. Speaking. We are going to the Capitol, where our problems are. It's that direction.
Ms. Sandburn, a lot of Americans are concerned that the federal government deliberately encouraged illegal and violent conduct on January 6th. This is a question of public accountability.
All right, okay, but one more thing.
Yeah, so can we go up there? No?
When we go in,
are we going to get arrested if we go up there?
You don't need to get shot.
Did federal agents or those in service of federal agent actively encourage violent and criminal conduct on January 6th?
Not to my knowledge, sir.
The conspiracy theory about Ray Epps is just a lie. It's just not true. There's a conspiracy theory. Obviously, I've seen it out there.
What have you done?
A lot more than you have.
What does that mean?
A lot more than you have.
You're just fucking out of your ass. You're fucking talking. That's right. We've been doing this long enough.
It's one of those pieces of what we've seen around January 6th that is pushed by people that want to suggest that this attack was something other than what it really was.
Epps also testified to the January 6th committee. He was back at his hotel when video evidence showed that he wasn't. He lied. He was on the Capitol grounds just as Brandon Strecka was. Epps even texted his nephew at 2:12 p.m. and said, I quote, "I was in the front with a few others. It was on the video. I also orchestrated it."
January 6th rioter and QAnon conspiracy theorist Doug Jensen was sentenced to 5 years in prison today.
More than 7 years in prison. 8 years behind bars.
10 years behind bars.
10 years in prison. 11 years in federal prison.
Nearly 13 years behind bars.
17 years in prison. 18 years behind bars.
Ray Epps is now facing misdemeanor charges, including disorderly or disruptive conduct.
Ray Epps, the only January 6th protester who actually told people to go into the Capitol, has been officially sentenced to 1 year probation, $500 restitution, and 100 hours of community service. While many J6 protesters are rotting in jail for nonviolent crimes, Epps escapes a prison term entirely.
If you had told me that January 6th was in any way an inside job, the subject of government entrapment, I would have told you that was crazy talk. Fringe conspiracy theory nonsense. I can tell you now, having gone somewhat deep in this, It's not. I mean, the reality is this. We do have a government, first of all, we have to acknowledge, that has lied to us systematically over the last several years about the origin of COVID-19, about the Hunter Biden laptop that we were told was false by 51 CIA experts and otherwise before we now know that it was true. You can go straight down the list, the Trump-Russia disinformation collusion hoax, all of it. Now we come to January 6th. The reality is we know that there were federal law enforcement agents in that field. We don't know how many. I think it's shameful. And if I may finish just answering,
well, let me
this
just.
is really
I'm gonna go ahead and interrupt you here because
I know
saying that
the establishment doesn't approve of this message. I know
that there were federal
we should be able to talk about this.
You're saying that there were federal agents.
This is important to talk about.
You are saying there were federal agents in the crowd on January 6th.
Yep.
There is no evidence that there were federal agents in the crowd on January 6th.
Well, we go undercover as Antifa in a crowd. So, can you put that back in? All right, thank you. Yep. You feel better? Did you guys get sprayed? Here.
So why, before Congress, when pressed on what the number was, they didn't say there were none? They just couldn't say how many.
So you're saying that that you have not seen any evidence.
So
that
we've
there
seen
were,
multiple.
and so
We've seen multiple informants suggesting that there were. We know people were FBI informants who were asked.
Is there any evidence?
May I just finish this, and then you can come back to question.
Well, let me clarify.
I know it's very uncomfortable for you.
I'm going to clarify my question.
I know this is an uncomfortable issue for many people, but we have to do the truth.
I'm going to clarify my question because I want to make sure that you understand what I'm asking.
I understand this deeply, and I told you I was there 3 years ago. I'm not there now.
Where is the evidence?
Hey, I'm hot. I can't see where the police lines are.
No, it is. Yo, keep your eyes open for Antifa.
We will. We are. That's why we're here. That's why we're here.
What do you say?
Keep your eyes for Antifa. They're all over here. I said that's why we're here.
Where is the evidence that the government had a plot, an inside job?
But no, I'm going to tell you what an inside job is, because I'm not
violence on January 6th.
I'm not going to let you put words in my mouth. I'm going to put my words in my mouth. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that.
Where is the evidence that the government was involved in planning or executing January 6th?
So you're going to get Antifa with the goggles on, that's what he said.
It's tear gas. It's tear gas.
Hang on. Grab on to Mikey. New shot. Up there. I'll be honest with you.
I don't.
Kinda?
Yeah.
Now you see footage coming out of actually rolling out the red carpet for Capitol Police allowing people in.
Again,
right through the front door.
The vast majority of that
footage should have been released before.
Mr. Ramaswamy, the vast majority of the footage shows police officers being overrun
and I want to talk about one more
by
case.
violent
really important.
riders. That's
I'm going to give you some hard facts.
Of it shows.
So here's what entrapment is.
Cherry pick.
I'm not cherry picking. If I may finish, Abby. If I may finish, Abby. I'm not cherry picking.
Examples.
To the contrary. To the contrary.
You know who cherry picked
examples? You know who cherry picked? The government.
That is what happened.
The government cherry picked 12 hours of footage when there was 200 hours of footage. Cherry picking was the government, not me. Release the whole thing.
Jim, what's up, dude?
It seems clear that there was some sort of conspiracy where there were organized assault elements that intended to assault the Capitol that day.
Now they're letting everybody in. There ain't nowhere to go.
Yeah. I think they're gonna trap everyone in.
There is an opportunity to learn lessons from the events of January 6th. Investigation should be considered as to the funding and travel and what appears to be professional agitators.
Hi there. This guy saw what just happened. He claims that it was Antifa dressed as Proud Boys. So I wanted to sort of get his
Trump
story.
supporters. They were dressed as Trump supporters. But I could tell by their conversation that they were looking to do, and I heard them say, we got to shake this up so that these people look bad. And I saw them break a window on the Capitol. I'm an emergency management coordinator in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. And these people were talking amongst themselves, and I was standing and listening behind them what they could do to make Trump's people look bad.
Wow, well, thank you for sharing.
And then after I left, I'm like, I'm out of here, okay? And then I started walking away. I heard something else. I heard somebody trying to break another window. I don't know if they actually broke the second window, but I heard something hit a second window.
Did you see any of the mob violence that happened?
That was on the other side of the Capitol building. So there were people climbing up the scaffolding, and a lot of Trump's people started saying, these aren't our people, and started walking away. And they were tearing the plastic, cutting the plastic, and then the Capitol Police let some tear gas go and got it under control. But they weren't Trump supporters, I'm telling you, they weren't Trump supporters.
Wow.
Trump supporters were walking away. These are people that are trying to promote the false narrative that Trump's people are acting like Antifa and BLM.
Stingball deployed! Stingball deployed! Stingball deployed!
If they'd never thrown the concussion grenades, if they'd never used a pepper spray, this wouldn't have happened. It was a peaceful protest. I was standing within 15 feet of the line of officers. They started firing at us before anybody did anything to them. We were not rushing them. There was no advance on them. They just started throwing concussion grenades and pepper spray. We get hit with a lot of pain compliance when you hit innocent people.
And not only that, we're taking out one and 10 of them are getting angrier. We're multiplying them by hitting.
Let's go! Fucking shoot it! Go! Shoot! Shoot! The fucking thing!
This is a slow motion of the actual flashbang grenades being fired into the crowd. Look at this. And these people have no idea that this is about to blow up in their face.
They also don't seem to be doing anything but standing around. Can you go back on that,
sure.
please, Jim?
They're just standing around. They're not even looking at the police or anything. They're talking to each other. They're conversing. They have no idea what is about to happen to them. And they're not pummeling cops. They're not spray painting buildings.
I offered them 10,000 soldiers. I said, it could be 10, it could be more, but I offered them specifically 10,000 soldiers. If they would have taken 500 soldiers, you wouldn't have had the problem. They turned it down. And if you look at the Inspector General report, he says they turned it down. They made a terrible mistake.
He fucked this shit all the way.
Who that?
Glover.
Yeah.
There should have been a line set up before they even got here, bro.
This is crazy.
They shut us up to fail.
They did.
There was no way we were winning that. And now you got at least 4 platoons that are just gassed out.
Yeah, literally.
Because us, 54, doesn't have masks.
Yeah. Well, remember, we're supposed to be rapid response just to buy time for the hard platoons to come.
They didn't come. They didn't ask for them.
Who cares about the street? Like, prioritize.
Secure the Capitol. They set us the fuck up. That's what they did. They set us up. They set up 64. Oh, absolutely. And then they asked y'all to come 2 hours later. They set us up. They needed everybody right away. Nah, right away. They set us the fuck up. So now we ain't got shit. We ain't got no motherfucking thing. They set us the fuck up. They set us the fuck up.
I'm hot.
You know, there were 4 porta potties out there for us today. 4 of them. 4 porta potties. Now what is that? You know, there's 50,000 people out there and 4 fucking porta potties. 4 porta potties.
We're not the porta potty police.
I know that, but the point is that it was intentional. It was intentionally programmed to make it difficult for us.
Can you tell us how the second pipe bomb was found at the DNC?
Again, I'm not going to get into that here.
900 days ago is when this happened, and you said you had total confidence we'd apprehend the subject. We've found video that looks like somebody, a passerby, miraculously found this pipe bomb at the DNC and then notified the police. Miraculously, I say, because it was at specifically the precise time to cause the maximum distraction from the events going on at the Capitol. This is somebody with a mask on, wearing a hat. They're walking in front of the DNC, which is out of the view on the right-hand side. You'll see him come into view. He goes to one police car. He goes to another police car. He's holding a backpack. He's got a mask on. He's talking to the police. And within a minute, they start scrambling. You'll see the camera turn to the pipe bomb, the location of the pipe bomb. By the way, that's, I believe the Metro police are now getting out of their car, and that's Vice President-elect's detail the black SUV, I believe, parked about 30 feet from the pipe bomb, eating lunch. It appears to me that that's not a coincidence.
And this gets to the guy who is the public face of the pipe bomb investigation, Stephen D'Antuono.
Hello, I'm Stephen D'Antuono, Assistant Director in charge of the FBI's Washington Field Office. It has been 2 months since our nation's capital was breached by violent extremists who sought to disrupt our democratic process.
He has a storied history within the FBI and an intimate involvement in several dark and dirty operations against your father.
Was that also Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan?
Abs bingo,
yeah.
Yes.
Magically.
You know, for anyone who hasn't paid much attention to this case recently, you know, this was a big deal back in 2020. It was part of the story of the extremism, the rising rhetoric around that time.
Earlier today, Attorney General Dana Nessel was joined by officials from the Department of Justice and the FBI to announce state and federal charges against 13 members of 2 militia groups who were preparing to kidnap and possibly kill me.
Well, these 3 men who were accused of being part of this 2020 plot to kidnap the Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer have all been acquitted on all counts. 2 of the 3 testified, saying that they took part in these drills but did not know the plot.
These people were exploited with credit cards up to $5,000, FBI agents, putting them up to a kidnapping plot that we were told was true but was entrapment. Same thing with the Capitol Police. People letting them in freely. Many of those people then being charged.
Look,
the government cannot put you up to do something and then charge you for it. That's wrong.
Incredibly disturbing that the President of the United States, 10 days after a plot to kidnap, put me on trial and execute me, 10 days after that was uncovered, the President is at it again and inspiring and incentivizing and inciting this kind of domestic terrorism.
While the cable news punditry busied itself conjuring bad press for the president, his many accomplishments would receive little to no attention on primetime. Aside from creating Space Force, the 6th branch of the military, a move that was mocked by the media, Trump's unsung accomplishments are still largely unknown to the average legacy media consumer today. Trump signed a law to make cruelty to animals a federal felony.
This common sense legislation restricts the creation and distribution of videos or images of animal torture. It is important that we combat these heinous and sadistic acts of cruelty, which are totally unacceptable in a civilized society.
He scored 4 significant peace deals in the Middle East.
They nominated your president twice last week on 2 different subjects for a Nobel Prize.
He signed the Farm Bill, finally making CBD and hemp legal.
Is a big deal for agriculture. It's a big deal for the U.S. economy, the ag economy, for food security, and for national security.
He signed a law ending the gag orders on pharmacists that prevented them from sharing money-saving information.
It's the Know the Lowest Price Act of 2018 and the Patient Right to Know Drug Prices Act. And obviously, based on the name, you can tell that this gives people knowledge as to prices at different locations, where to buy the drugs. That will have an immediate impact, too.
He signed the biggest wilderness protection and conservation bill in a decade and designated 375,000 acres as protected land.
Priceless historic treasures, and that's exactly what they are. Grand national monuments and glorious national parks.
He signed the Save Our Seas Act, which funds $10 million per year to clean up tons of plastic and garbage from the ocean.
Every year, over 8 million tons of garbage is dumped into our beautiful oceans. This waste, trash, and debris harms not only marine life, but also fishermen, coastal economies along America's vast stretches.
He signed the Right to Try bill, allowing terminally ill patients to try experimental treatments that are not yet approved by the FDA.
With the Right to Try law I'm signing today, patients with life-threatening illnesses will finally have access to experimental treatments that could improve or even cure their conditions.
He created a White House VA hotline to help veterans and principally staffed it with veterans and direct family members of veterans.
So I just want to thank you, our incredible veterans. We stand with you, we salute you, and with this new legislation, we strive to better support and serve you every single day. Thank you. God bless you. God bless our veterans, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
He signed the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund into law.
And I'm going to say this now. I hope, are the cameras on? Is everybody on me? The Trump Justice Department is doing an excellent job administrating this program. The claims are going through faster, and the awards are coming through.
He signed legislation to improve the National Suicide Hotline.
What do you think this hotline is going to mean? Cecilia, I think this is historic for us as a country in mental health. It really represents a massive culture change, culture shift in recognizing that there are millions of people in this country who have mental health emergencies.
And he signed an executive order meant to combat human trafficking and online child exploitation.
Human trafficking now is bigger worldwide. This is not a U.S. situation, this is a world situation. Because of the internet, far worse than it ever has been. You would think that was an ancient form of criminality. It's not.
These are just a sample of the administration's many accomplishments that cable news viewers likely never heard of.
President Trump unveiling what the White House is calling the biggest tax cut in American history.
Well, thank you very much, and I just want to congratulate everybody. The stock market, Dow Jones Industrial Average just hit 30,000, which is the highest in history.
But this election will decide whether we build on this extraordinary prosperity that we've created. Did you see the numbers on Friday? Did you see those numbers? Or whether we let the radical Democrats take a giant wrecking ball to our economy and to our future. America now has the best economy in the history of our country.
But you'll have a crash like you've never seen before. You put the wrong person in office, you'll see things that you would not have believed are possible.
These are all the executive orders that Biden revoked, all of them coming 2017, 2017, 2017, 2017, 2019, 2020. These are all Trump executive orders. And when you go down here and look at what these actually were that he revoked, a majority of these have to do with the economy. He does it in the name of climate change.
All of this incredible job that we've done will go down like that. It will be a terrible, terrible sight. It might even be a 1929 situation.
It's the emotional, psychological, cultural connection to someone who really has, unfortunately, manipulated social media and also some so-called mainstream media in a way that people believe what he says to them. And that's hard to break. It's like being in a cult.
Donald Trump intensifying his violent rhetoric. Surprise! Seemingly threatening a, quote, bloodbath if he doesn't win in 2024, while dehumanizing immigrants and embracing the terrorists who tried to topple the government on January 6th.
We're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country.
So it's not simply one comment. This is exactly who Donald Trump is, and this is exactly the threat that he poses to our democracy every single day.
President Biden's campaign swiftly denouncing those comments as threats of political violence.
In this context, I think he was talking about an economic bloodbath.
Donald Trump was not alone in his mistreatment by legacy media. In the 2019 Democratic primary debates, presidential candidate Tulsi Gabbard had her face digitally altered on live television. NBC motion tracked a fake blemish onto Gabbard's face, which would frequently vanish and reappear in real time.
Far more costly than anything that we ever saw in Iraq. It would take many more lives. It would exacerbate the refugee crisis.
Did anybody after the debates mention it to you that this strange thing seemed to happen?
No, I had no idea. You guys are clearly on it. When I saw it, I was like, that wasn't there. That wasn't there at all yesterday. And then to see it disappear was very strange.
I mean, we're trying to figure out what it is. Obviously, the obvious question, you didn't feel anything happening, right?
No, that was all on camera. I think somebody's got to launch an investigation to get to the bottom of this.
Mueller is free right now, so...
True, he's kind of expensive though, man. He costs a lot.
While legacy media was torpedoing its credibility, the independent media was starting to thrive like never before. However, towards the end of his first term came the most consequential story of the Trump era.
Was that your laptop?
For real, I don't know.
I know, but you know that this is...
I really don't know.
Okay.
The answer is.
You don't know, yes or no, if the laptop
I don't have
was
any
yours.
idea. I have no idea.
So could have been yours.
Of course, certainly. There could be a laptop out there that was stolen from me. There could be that I was hacked. It could be that it was Russian intelligence. It could be that it was stolen from me.
5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
That's exactly what.
Is this where you're going? This is where he's going. The laptop is Russia.
Gentlemen, I want to stay on the issue of race.
You have to be kidding. Here we go again with Russia.
Right, so you hear the story of this laptop. We don't know a lot. How much does the source matter here?
Well, the source matters a lot, and the timing matters a lot, I think. And to me, this is just classic textbook Soviet-Russian tradecraft at work.
The contents of the laptop held grave implications, namely that one of the presidential candidates in the 2020 election was involved in various influence peddling and quid pro quo schemes with foreign interests.
What was more scandalous than the reporting itself, though, was the fact that it exposed the unholy alliance between the intelligence community, social media platforms, and legacy media outlets.
In short, access to the White House was available to the highest bidder.
No, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
It should have been the biggest story of the year. Instead, social media platforms used the letter as a pretext to weed out anyone sharing information on the laptop, including the New York Post.
They used tools for child pornography to make sure you couldn't even DM the link to the new. Do you understand how bananas that is?
NBC, ABC, CBS, they're not covering it whatsoever. But what I have seen on social media are legacy media journalists coming out and attacking Elon Musk and even Matt Taibbi because he gave the story to an independent journalist.
The livelihoods of countless individuals were systematically stripped away, and the nation has now endured 4 years of punishment under a corrupt regime, all because vital information that would have swung the election was covered up.
Welcome to the Oval Office. Come on in.
If you have a piece of crack cocaine,
come on,
no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand,
They probably smoked more Parmesan cheese than anyone that you know, I'm sure, Tracy.
a law that says you're caught with that, you go to jail.
If you can't admire Joe Biden as a person, it's probably you got a problem. You need to do some self-evaluation.
I like to drive. You get no probation. Judge doesn't have a choice.
We go back a long way. She was 12, I was 30, but anyway.
The Secret Service said it has closed its investigation into that mysterious bag of cocaine that was found in a White House work area earlier this month.
And you feel like you're in complete control. This is just boom.
Are you on track today?
Mr. President, thank you for being here as we get set for a wonderful day in sports. Opening day for America's national pastime.
This was about 2 months after he took office.
That was an interesting experience in its own right because it was so structured, and I was told, you will say every word that we write out. You will not deviate from the script, and go. To the word, like every single question was scripted, gone over dozens of times by many executives, editors and executives. Absolutely. I was on script and was told not to deviate. It was very much, this is what you will ask, this is how you will say it. No follow-ups. No follow-ups. Next. I knew that this was a lot bigger than just the wonderful editors that I worked with. This went up to the fourth floor, as we said, that where all the bosses, the top executives, the decision makers are, the president of our company, the CEO, where they all worked.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever. I've said it for years now. He's cogent. But I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent.
By the beginning of the Biden administration, YouTube was caught manipulating the like-dislike ratio, including but not limited to the official White House videos, in some cases by thousands of percent. This practice of deleting thousands of dislikes on videos was documented by the now defunct 81m.org, a website whose namesake undermines the specious 81 million votes that Biden reportedly received as the most popular president in American history, elected in the most secure election in American history.
Government and industry representatives from the election security community issued a joint statement reflecting a consensus perspective that the 2020 election was the most secure in U.S. history.
Donald Trump and the America First ideology stood defiantly opposed to globalism. Naturally, this political philosophy caught on and began to spread to other nations. Populist candidates in countries across the globe saw historic victories.
Make Argentina great again. Viva la libertad, carajo!
And utterly panicked legacy media set out to convince their captured audiences that the rising populist sentiment was only held among a fringe minority of extremists.
I mean, we lay out the fourfold interconnected threat that white rural voters pose to the country. They're the most racist, xenophobic, anti-immigrant, and anti-gay geodemographic group in the country. Second, they're the most conspiracist group. QAnon support and subscribers, election denialism, COVID denialism and scientific skepticism, Obama birtherism. Third, anti-democratic sentiments. They don't believe in an independent press, free speech. They're most likely to say the president should be able to act unilaterally without any checks from Congress or the courts or the bureaucracy. They're also the most strongly white nationalist and white Christian nationalists. And fourth, they are most likely to excuse or justify violence as an acceptable alternative to peaceful public discourse.
So you mentioned a lot of negative factors about this demographic.
So we have to stop demonizing people and realize the biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized right up to the right. And we have to start doing something about them.
They are literally understanding we've got the cities, we're about to take the dollar, we're collapsing the border. Who is the opposition? They're already lasing the target that it's the rural people.
And I will say that a majority of the domestic terrorism cases that we've investigated are motivated by some version of what you might call white supremacist violence.
And we won't ignore what our intelligence agencies have determined to be the most lethal terrorist threat to the homeland today. White supremacy is terrorism.
White supremacists and these militias are a genuine threat.
If we fail to remove a white supremacist president who incited a white supremacist insurrection, it's
and that's their next target, just like when Lenin and Trotsky and Stalin took over just Moscow and a few cities, took them 5 years to take over Russia. Who was the target? The farmers. The
kulaks.
Because they produce the food. And if you get them, now you've got everybody.
It's just amazing that they tried to cancel you. And what you just said, even if people don't agree with it ever, it's so much more interesting and smart than anything ever uttered on CNN or MSNBC. And I worked at those channels, so I know for a fact.
A free press cannot carry out its vital societal function when its executives are incentivized to parrot globalist agendas over reporting the truth.
You have to force behaviors, and at BlackRock we are forcing behaviors.
But news media is changing. Among these changes is the rise of the citizen journalist. Citizen journalism is based upon public citizens playing an active role in the process of collecting, reporting, analyzing, and disseminating news and information.
I'm not sure, and I'm not sure if anybody could be sure of where this is all heading, what the exact teleology is, but it seems to be to do with mass centralization, globalization, significant attempts to control the information space that are so rigorously adhered to and protected that even what you might imagine to be a marginal voice is considered a significant enough threat to warrant coordinated media attacks.
So, our mission continues on. I'm not done. The mission will perhaps take on a new name.
There's nothing that the Western establishment fears more than the success of a capable and honest, decentralized media. They know that a self-organizing industry of citizen journalists operating on principle would render the mainstream media obsolete. However, try as they may, the death of legacy media as we know it is an inevitability.
I have to give it to the ultra-conservative pro-censorship organizations like Moms for Liberty. They've successfully made banning books a national issue, and these days, everyone is paying attention to it, even Hollywood. Limiting access to literature doesn't just cheat them of knowledge and squash their creativity and stifle their growth. It actually threatens the future of their country, of our country.
As our nation is subverted from within, legacy media portrays anyone who draws attention to the subversion as an extremist, a lunatic, or a terrorist.
Last September, the Biden White House colluded with the National School Boards Association to orchestrate a letter to President Biden that portrayed concerned parents speaking out at school board meetings as security threats. The letter urged the president to use the Patriot Act to go after America's moms and dads. Just 5 days later, the Attorney General issued a memorandum directing the FBI and U.S. Attorney's offices to address a, quote, disturbing spike in harassment, intimidation, and threats of violence at school board meetings.
I stopped counting on page 66 after 44 fucks and 41 shits.
GD, effing, C word, F word, S word, A word, effer, I yelled. I flailed and stomped my boot in disgust as a dollop of S word hit the sliding glass door. S word, effing mother of F. F you, I said.
I don't care if it's heterosexual, lesbian, I don't care what it is. It's filth. It won awards. Jenna Jameson won awards at the AVAs.
What if I told you I touched another guy's dick? What if I told you I sucked it? I was 10 years old, but it's true. I put Doug Goebel's dick in my mouth. I was in 4th grade. It was no big deal. He sucked mine too. And you know what? It wasn't terrible.
I'm a 43-year-old man and I'm embarrassed to say this stuff. And yet you say it's okay for this to be in the hands of my children. Shame on you.
What's the educational benefit of talking about Is that going to help someone on the SAT score? Hear me kind. Get a shot at that. She can care less.
Something they don't teach you in school is that in order to be able to come at all, you or your partner may need to finish off with a handy. A lot of people find it hard to come through other types of sex. That is fine and certainly not something you have to apologize for. A good handy is all about the wrist action. Rub the head of his cock back and forth with your hand. Try different speeds and pressures until he responds positively. A bad handy is grasping a penis and shaking it like a ketchup bottle.
If I were to read it to you, you would not be able to air it because it would be against FCC obscenity laws.
Page 23. The other boy, page 23.
All I could think about while he was chatting me up was his little salamander between my 4th grade fingers rapidly engorging with blood. page 230, I didn't make a sign for this. Why won't you admit we sucked each other's dicks? We shared a Hershey's bar, then you showed me your dick. The next thing I know, it's in my mouth. We sucked each other's dick, and you're pretending it didn't happen.
My misunderstanding about rubbing two peens together wasn't far off the mark. Rubbing them together in one hand feels awesome. Mega combo handy, trademark pending.
I ask you simply, this is a public meeting. I ask for decorum, and I'm asking, if you don't want me to read it to you, what was that like for my 15-year-old daughter to have to memorize pornographic material and memorize it and portray?
Madam President, members of the board, staff's on this. We can have the region superintendent speak.
Excuse me. Yes. We have children at home.
I know.
It's live streaming, and it's really not appropriate.
Don't you find the irony in that? You're exactly saying exactly what I'm telling you.
Some blowjob tips. Number 1, use your lungs to suck your lips to pull.
Due to the lack of order, we will end this board meeting. We're all sick individuals.
Oh, you're putting me out. For what? For asking you to abide by the rules? Come on, man! Let's talk about what this really is. You hate gay people. And it's obvious. Just look at how you behave.
Who normalizes sex acts between fourth graders? I'll tell you who. Pedophiles.
Does equity and inclusion also include incestuous relationships, child-adult sex, and books that promote pedophilia?
Results for pedophilia, 16. Lesbian, 84. Jesus, 19, but half of them are about Muslims.
Sodomy, rape, and drug use.
I want to be able to send my children to school knowing that they're not going to be exposed to something that could harm them.
As a mother who happens to be gay, I don't find it necessary.
A normal, psychologically sound and stable mind would come to a conclusion that that specific material is nothing but sexually explicit.
I'm going to stop you right there, sir. I'm going to stop you right there.
Turn the microphone off.
Turn off his microphone, please. I've told you I'm stopping you. The reason I'm stopping you is because these meetings are, if you'll hush your mouth for a minute and listen instead of just talking, you may learn something.
2 minutes are up. Thank you. We will vote you out November 8th. You are not leaders. I'm not on the ballot November 8th.
I'm speaking out today to hold you guys accountable for what you have been appointed to do, is to uphold a school environment that serves its students effectively. It is not to serve a crooked and perverse agenda that aims to normalize sexualization of children.
Lead this district, protect our children, or get out of the way.
It is the administration before me that is closed-minded, singularly focused on tolerance to such a degree that you cannot see the harm and inappropriateness of the curriculum for young kids.
Maybe we could just put all the books with all the graphic sexual content, the dildos, the rape, the
I'm sorry.
Let's do
I'm so sorry.
Let's do a back room.
Excuse me.
Let's put a curtain up in the library
First of
like
all,
they used
hold
to
on.
do.
One moment.
in the video
One moment.
stores. Remember
the
when we were
books
little
that Moms
and you
for
would go to the
Liberty.
video store?
The books that Moms for
and they
Liberty.
put those
the books that Moms for
videos
Liberty.
with pornography.
I know that you. I've.
We could just do that in
I
the
have
public
seen
library.
tapes of
Does
what
that
Moms for
sound
Liberty does, and you all go into school board meetings and you read graphic stuff.
Disingenuous conversation.
No, it's not.
There's America used to understand that there's something called age-appropriate content.
Right, and here's my question again.
On movies.
Again.
Outside of a few media giants, such as the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, most of the liberal corporate media is in full-scale collapse. Widely recognized media organizations such as the Los Angeles Times, Time Magazine, NBC News, Sports Illustrated, National Geographic, and Business Insider have either experienced significant workforce reductions or have been forced to the verge of extinction. BuzzFeed, the outlet responsible for breaking the Steele dossier, completely abolished its news division in 2023. In early 2024, LA Times laid off 25% of its already decimated newsroom in just one day. On the contrary, independent media has only continued to grow with no end in sight, and has become an existential threat to the corporate media.
And it just reminds me, Hitler talking about, you know, just flooding the zone with lie after lie after lie after lie. After a while, people get exhausted and just give up.
Honestly, Twitter or X now is really where I get like all my news. Like I don't even resort to a lot of the mainstream media places, at least for breaking news. Like I'll find it on X.
But I'm now seeing that independent media itself is an extraordinary threat. The independent media inevitably leads to independent politics and independent thought. And we appear to be at some precipitous moment of radical transition.
This threat has led to the creation of an entire industry whose sole purpose is to cripple independent media and snuff out all dissent.
The top concern for the next 2 years is not conflict or climate. It is disinformation and misinformation.
Eisenhower's fears were well-founded. Today, American taxpayers are unwittingly financing the growth and power of a censorship industrial complex.
Expenditure on peculiar, clandestine, non-government organizations and think tanks that take their money from the military-industrial complex, from the legacy media, who, by the way, when they're critiquing independent media, they got skin in the game. They're not able to independently assess your work or my work or the medical opinions of Joe Rogan. They have a vested interest in destroying those organizations.
This will sound crazy, but China does it. We've got to now take control of Twitter and shut it down for the time being.
I've been a research psychologist for nearly 40 years. My PhD is from Harvard, and since 1981 I've published extensively on AI and other topics. Some of my research has focused on Google, on the company's massive surveillance operations, censorship capabilities, and unprecedented ability to manipulate the thinking of 2.5 billion people, soon to be 4+ billion. Biased search results can easily produce shifts in the opinions and voting preferences of undecided voters by up to 80%. These manipulations are invisible and non-competitive. They're controlled entirely by big tech companies, and there is no way to counteract them. To let big tech get away with subliminal manipulation on this scale would be to make the free and fair election meaningless.
Many journalists in the independent media space not only have better track records, but often predict events months, if not years, ahead of the mainstream media.
All these fucking stories had the gatekeepers in the media who, okay, I guess I'll talk about this story now that's been out for 3 years. Had they been following the shit, the actual truth to its source, like they're supposed to as journalists, from the time that came out, we wouldn't be here. Trump would still be in office. The election never would have been stolen. We cannot be standing in the end zone, waiting for people and celebrate every time these journalists move the ball an inch down the field, but they haven't even crossed the 50 yet.
We have arrived at one of the great inflection points in history. Billions of humans are now increasingly misled about the state and trajectory of civilization. The information with which we construct our worldviews is largely distorted, if not completely inverted.
If this government ever became a tyranny, if a dictator ever took charge in this country, the technological capacity that the intelligence community has given the government could enable it to impose total tyranny, and there would be no way to fight back. I know the capacity that is there to make tyranny total in America. And we must see to it that this agency and all agencies that possess this technology operate within the law and under proper supervision so that we never cross over that abyss.
We're demanding an end to the shadow banning, a stop to the silencing, and a stop to the blacklisting, banishing, and canceling that you know so well.
As many are now realizing that the stability of society is contingent on the veracity of information consumed by the masses, a decentralization of power in the news media space seems warranted, as independent media can help us unify around truth while exposing anyone seeking to suppress it.
Mass media is finished. It doesn't make any sense anymore. Mass media is one-to-many communication. And what the internet offers is any-to-any communication. now, something entirely different is happening. The new media is non-linear. It doesn't require lockstep acquiescence in a model of behavior. Different styles of dissent have in the 20th century all gained a great deal more prominence as the print culture gave way to the electronic culture. And in the future, I think these enormous structures which we're asked to participate in are just going to fade away. A tremendous leveling of information takes place. The print game is a game of privilege. Information confers power, and if you have it, you hold it. The electronic game is a game where all information is equally accessible and shareable, and it creates a different and more egalitarian information field.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society.